It was one of those rare days when Washington, D.C., seemed to hold its breath. The Capitol's marble corridors gleamed under the harsh midday light, and the press briefing room was already packed long before the scheduled start time. Every major news outlet had sent their top correspondents, say CNN, Fox, MSNBC, even foreign journalists from the BBC and Al Jazeera. The rumor mill had been spinning for hours. Bernie Sanders was going to say something big. The air was thick with tension, and when Senator Sanders finally stepped onto the stage, a low murmur rippled through the room. He looked older than usual, a little grayer, but the fire in his eyes burned bright as the same stubborn flame that had carried him through decades of political storms. He placed a stack of papers on the podium but didn't look down at them. His voice, rough yet commanding, filled the hall. "Today," he began, "I am not here to play politics. I am here to speak the truth, the kind of truth that too many in Washington are too afraid to say." The cameras zoomed in. Pens froze midair. Reporters leaned forward. Sanders gripped the podium. "For too long, Donald Trump has gotten away with calling himself a champion of the people. He's not a champion, he's a demagogue. And worse, say he's a criminal who has exploited his position for personal gain while pretending to care about working families." Gasps rippled through the crowd. He wasn't mincing words, not even close. While ordinary Americans were struggling to pay rent, feed their families, and afford medicine, Donald Trump was using his power to enrich himself and his cronies. He talks about making America great again, but he's made his friends richer and this country more divided than ever. A few members of the press corps started scribbling furiously, others whispering to their producers. Sanders continued, voice rising with every word. "This man stood before the American people and said he would drain the swamp. But he is the swamp. A man who dodges taxes, insults veterans, mocks the disabled, and calls it leadership. That's not a patriot. That's a fraud." The last word echoed through the room like a gunshot. Sanders' staffers exchanged uneasy glances. They knew he was stepping onto dangerous ground, legally, politically, even personally. But the senator didn't care. He'd watched enough injustice, enough manipulation, enough of what he saw as the corrosion of democracy. He took a breath and leaned forward, his voice lower now but filled with conviction. "Donald Trump wants to divide us, by race, by religion, by class, because the vision keeps him powerful. But the truth, my friends, is that Americans are not each other's enemies. The real enemy is greed. The real enemy is corruption. The real enemy is the man who built his empire on the backs of working people, then called them lazy when they demanded fairness." Applause erupted from some corners of the room, something rare at a press conference. A few reporters clapped before catching themselves. Sanders raised his hand slightly, signaling for calm. "He can call me a socialist, he can call me whatever name he wants, but at least I've never used my position to make myself rich at the expense of others. I have never betrayed my voters for profit. And I'll tell you this, Donald Trump may have gold towers, but he has no moral compass." That line, "and no moral compass," hit like thunder. Within minutes, it was trending across social media. Clips of the speech flooded Twitter and TikTok, captioned with bold headlines, "Bernie goes nuclear on Trump, Sanders calls Trump a criminal, Bernie's most explosive speech yet." Across the country, supporters cheered, while Trump loyalists fumed. Conservative pundits called it political theater. Liberal commentators called it the truth we needed to hear. Meanwhile, back at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump sat in his office surrounded by screens. Fox News was already replaying the speech on loop. His phone buzzed nonstop, texts from advisors, donors, even family members. "You've seen this, right?" One message read, "You need to respond." Trump watched the replay again, the corners of his mouth twitching. He didn't look angry, he looked amused. "That's cute," he muttered. "Bernie's trying to stay relevant." He reached for his phone and began typing. The room fell silent as aides knew what was coming. When Trump's thumb started moving, the internet would shake. A few seconds later, his message appeared on X, formerly Twitter. "Greater than Bernie Sanders, a total failure. Spent 40 years in politics. Did nothing but talk. Now he's calling me a criminal. The only crime here is how this guy keeps collecting taxpayer money while pretending to be an outsider." Sad. Within moments, the post exploded. His followers flooded it with replies. "Tell him, Mr. President, Bernie's the real crook. Sleepy socialist Bernie is trending. Cable networks cut into programming to report on Trump's response. CNN brought in analysts to discuss the escalating war of words. MSNBC had a panel of strategists arguing over whether Sanders had gone too far. Fox News aired the clip of Trump's post with dramatic music, followed by a commentator saying, "Trump hits back hard and fair." By the evening, every political show in America had one topic: Sanders versus Trump. Round 1. At Sanders' campaign headquarters in Burlington, Vermont, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. Activists wanted quotes. His communications director, Mia, looked up from her laptop and said, "Senator, we're trending in 20 countries. People are calling this her defining moment." Bernie sighed. "It's not about trending," he said quietly. "It's about waking people up." But even as he said it, he knew Trump would never let it end there, and he was right. By late evening, Trump released a second post, at this time accompanied by a video clip. It showed Sanders during the 2016 election, endorsing Hillary Clinton after losing the Democratic nomination. The caption read, "Greater than remember when Bernie sold out his own revolution? Maybe he should stop pretending to care about the people he betrayed." It was a brutal move, a classic Trump. The video spread like wildfire. Even Sanders supporters cringed. The footage reminded everyone of one of the lowest moments of his political career. Mia turned to him, pale. "Sierra broken bar. Do we respond?" Bernie rubbed his temples. "We respond tomorrow," he said, "but not with another post. We'll do it live." He looked out the window toward the dark Vermont skyline. His mind was already working, words forming, ideas tightening. He'd faced ridicule, defeat, and mockery before, but this time, he felt something deeper. Determination. Because this wasn't just about Trump. It was about what Trump represented, everything Bernie had spent his life fighting against. He stood up, his old leather chair creaking behind him. "If Trump wants a war of words," he said, voice steady and low, "then he's going to get one." His staff watched silently. They'd seen that look before, at the fire that meant Bernie Sanders wasn't backing down. By the next morning, the networks had already announced it. Live. Senator Sanders to respond to Trump's attacks in national broadcast. The stage was set. Two men, two visions of America, and a nation about to witness one of the most electrifying political clashes in modern history. The lights in the studio were almost blinding. Rows of cameras pointed directly at Senator Bernie Sanders as he sat beneath the harsh glow, his expression firm but calm. The town hall was packed, every seat taken, every breath from the audience audible. Millions more were tuned in from across the country, watching on live television and streaming platforms. The atmosphere was electric. This wasn't just another political debate. This was personal. After his fiery speech and Trump's viral clapback, the country had split into two camps: those who saw Bernie as the voice of moral outrage, and those who thought he was an out-of-touch relic trying to stay relevant. In the age of Trump, everyone was waiting to see what would happen when the two finally faced off, even if only through screens. The moderator, veteran journalist Dana Crow, cleared her throat as the broadcast began. "Good evening, America. Tonight, we have with us Senator Bernie Sanders, who's agreed to respond to President Trump's recent comments. We also understand that President Trump may be calling in live during the show." The crowd murmured. Cameras zoomed closer. Bernie leaned forward. "Thank you, Dana. Let me start by saying this: we are living in a time where truth is treated like an inconvenience. But I'm not here to trade insults. I'm here to remind people what's at stake for our country." He spoke slowly at first, building momentum like a wave-gathering force. Donald Trump has spent years dividing Americans. He's convinced people that billionaires care about them while taking away their health care, their unions, and their dignity. He calls himself successful, but his success was built on unpaid workers, bankruptcies, and broken promises. Applause broke out. But Sanders wasn't done. "This isn't about left or right. It's about decency. It's about whether we still believe in a government that serves people, not corporations, not special interests, not billionaires who pretend to be patriots." The crowd roared again, but then the room fell silent as the moderator's earpiece buzzed. She turned slightly, listening. "Senator," she said cautiously, We've just received word that President Trump has joined us via live video. The large LED screen behind the stage flickered, and suddenly, Trump's face appeared confident, tanned, smirking. He leaned back in his chair at Mar-a-Lago, golden drapes glinting behind him. "Hello, Bernie," Trump said, his voice booming through the studio speakers. "I thought I'd stop by to correct some of your fake news." The crowd gasped. Some booed, others clapped. The tension was unbearable. Bernie adjusted his glasses and nodded slightly. "Well, Mr. Trump, I suppose I should thank you for joining us. I didn't think you'd show up." "Oh, I never miss an opportunity to expose hypocrisy," Trump replied, smiling. "You've been calling me names for years. Bernie, a demagogue, criminal, dictator, all while living off taxpayer money. How's that for irony?" The audience murmured. Bernie's jaw tightened, but his tone stayed measured. "Mr. Trump, I live off a senator's salary, which is public and earned by serving the people, unlike you, who've spent a lifetime using loopholes and offshore accounts to avoid paying your fair share." Trump chuckled. "Fair share? Bernie, you own 3 houses. Don't lecture me about money. You talk like a working man, but you live like an elitist. You and your friends in Washington preach socialism while enjoying capitalism's rewards." The jab hit hard. Some in the crowd even nodded. Bernie took a deep breath, trying to focus. "I worked for everything I have, Mr. Trump," he replied. "I didn't inherit millions or bankrupt casinos. And let's be clear, having homes doesn't make me corrupt. Using power to divide a country, to incite hatred, to profit off fear, that's corruption." Trump leaned forward, his grin widening. "Oh, Bernie, you always talk about division, but who divided your own party? You did. You couldn't even beat Hillary. You gave up your so-called revolution for a speaking slot at the DNC. That's not leadership, that's surrender." The words hit like a punch. Even the audience fell silent. For a brief moment, Bernie's eyes flickered, a flash of the past, the 2016 betrayal, the disappointment of millions who'd believed in his political revolution. He could hear Trump's voice echoing over it. "You endorsed the establishment." He paused, then leaned toward the microphone. "You know, Mr. Trump," he said quietly, "you love to talk about winning. But not everything worth fighting for is about winning. Sometimes it's about standing for what's right, even when you lose." The audience erupted into applause. But Trump wasn't done. "That's a nice speech, Bernie," Trump sneered, "but speeches don't build jobs. They don't build towers. They don't make America great again. You're all talk. I actually did something for this country." You've been complaining since the 70s. Bernie didn't look away. "You built towers. Yes, but you built them with cheap labor, unpaid contractors, and lies. You didn't build America, you exploited it." Trump's face hardened. "You sound jealous, Bernie. You spent your life in politics. And I did more in 4 years than you did in 40. The economy boomed under me. The border was secure. The world respected us again." Bernie shot back, voice rising for the first time. "Respected us? You turned our allies against us. You emboldened dictators. You made America a circus, where truth didn't matter, and greed ruled everything." The two men were now talking over each other at the crowd, cheering, booing, shouting. It was chaos. The moderator tried to interject. "Gentlemen, please see." But the back and forth only intensified. "Trump, you hate America's success because you can't create any. Bernie, you are America's failure, a symbol of everything broken in our system." Finally, the moderator managed to cut through. "Mr. President, Senator, let's keep this civil. One last statement from each of you, please." The room fell silent again. Trump went first. "Look, folks," he said, his voice calmer now but still sharp. "Bernie talks big, but he doesn't deliver. I may not be perfect, but I love this country. I built things. I created jobs. He just talks about problems he's never solved. That's why I win, and he never will." He leaned back, confident. The camera caught the gleam in his eyes, that unmistakable Trump flair. Then it was Bernie's turn. He looked directly into the camera, his tone solemn. "Mr. Trump, you talk about building, but you can't build what matters most, trust, empathy, community. You've built walls, not bridges. You've built anger, not hope. And one day, those towers of gold will crumble under the weight of the truth." The audience stood, clapping thunderously. Trump smirked but said nothing. He gave a short, dismissive wave, and the screen cut to black. The broadcast ended, but America was already on fire. Within minutes, hashtags flooded social media. #Bernie versus Trump, #Tower of Lies, #Speechless Trump. Millions of comments poured in, some praising Bernie for finally standing his ground, others celebrating Trump's ruthless clapbacks. Pundits on late-night shows called it the most explosive political exchange in recent memory. News outlets replayed the moment endlessly. Bernie's line about walls and bridges became the quote of the night. But behind closed doors, neither man celebrated. In Mar-a-Lago, Trump sat quietly for once, staring at the blank screen. "He's not as easy to break as the others," he muttered. "He actually believes what he says." And in Vermont, Bernie walked out into the cold night air, away from cameras and microphones. He looked up at the sky, thinking about what had just happened, about the country divided between truth and spectacle. He didn't feel victorious, just resolute, because deep down, he knew this wasn't the end of a debate. It was the beginning of a reckoning, one that would test not just two men, but the very soul of the nation they both claimed to love.